And I love the fact that we have such a diverse panel to really look at the different facets of working with enterprises. What are some of the challenges you find that they're facing, but what do you think the opportunity is for them to just kind of push through and build products that are going to be valuable in this space?
Definitely, there's an education component that everybody needs to be aware of, because with enterprises, they're not hanging out in these conferences like we are. Well, some of them, but so it's going to take a little bit to actually explain to the companies, and honestly, you need to demo and show a lot of them what the potential of augmented and virtual reality is. So just I would recommend to build that into your timeline from a sales perspective. Just to add a little bit too, I think we need to start branching out and being in more of the enterprise-based conferences versus just the VR and AR-based conferences, and starting to integrate the conversation about virtual and augmented reality in an enterprise-based conference.
That's exactly. I liken us all to a second grade soccer team. We're all just huddled around the ball, just kind of going from conference to conference, telling each other how great the technology is. And
while it's important to educate the enterprise, I think it's also important to educate this industry how to put together the business cases, how to sit in the boardroom and make the connections between the pretty cool tech that can slam a model of a piece of equipment and split it out and everything, but what does that mean for a CFO in the room, and what is that, and when is they're going to hit ROI, and how can they justify it? And you've got to find that advocate inside the enterprise, someone who not only sees the dream of AR and VR and believes it, but also has the nous and the guts to go it inside an enterprise and put themselves out there and try and forge their way to getting that company started in this space.
First, I want to agree with Amy when she talked about going to this industry-specific conferences. The first one that we exhibited was at Startup Grind, and the second was in virtual medicine, when everybody at virtual medicine, doctors and the therapists, understood what we were doing and saw the value proposition there.
And I know Accenture, it's again, looking at this broader picture, is very focused on sort of the systems integration piece of it, which is a big challenge, right? You've got legacy systems that these large companies, have had for years, and it's a landmine. How are you dealing with that, and how are you kind of getting over that issue?
We need to remember is not to sell it as, hey, there's this new great VR thing. It's what problem do you have, and how are we solving it so that it'll make it better? Right. So if in the instance of training that you guys were using, right, if the problem is retention, then you go in and you say, here's a way to improve retention, and then you explain VR. So. And that's the case in healthcare, I'm sure, as well. But yeah, just think about it again. Go back to a lot of the startups I'm seeing are, here's this great new technology, and then I say, okay, what problem is it solving? And they say, problem? I mean, and not from the entertainment perspective, but completely from the enterprise perspective. So again, remember, you're solving a problem for this enterprise. You're helping the enterprise from a business model perspective function better.
One of the things we've really woken up to in the last year or two is just the financial realities of the world we operate in. And a lot of the companies we work with are just like, we're trying to get our website up, we're trying to keep the lights on, like, what is this XR stuff you're talking about? And so there were times that pilots got squeezed and just scope got trimmed, and in the process, and myself even to blame for some of this, we said, oh yeah, we'll figure out the numbers at the end, or it'll be a hit, we know it'll be a success, and then you get there and you don't have the data. You didn't set up the benchmarks in the beginning, and that then made it difficult to sell the next phase to prove what a success it was. So if I have any piece of advice on that, it sounds a little obvious, but it's just like, my God, make sure you know what you're measuring, make sure you have the baseline set up in advance, and then take the time to measure it at the end and really promote the wins that you have.
That is very true, and the challenge is a lot of the companies don't know what data points they want. I mean, we can record everything, and the strategy that we use really is looking at their sort of existing data analytics models and their KPIs, and we try and kind of wire in, whatever those, particularly in sim and training, what the learning outcomes are, and we try and wire it into their sort of existing data collection models. But it's challenging, and there's so much data that it's hard to kind of streamline. But
Other than the wow factor of VR, you have to actually show how this is better than what they already have, and how it's making their process more efficient, it's saving their time, and they're able to treat more patients. So showing that value proposition is what is helping us get to the next level.
One being, in the industrial space, it's easy, super easy, because they're measuring everything so tightly anyway. So, for example, we've just done a global deal with Honeywell, and they're now rolling out the HMT1Z1s, the intrinsically safe versions of this wearable device, into their connected plant stuff. And I've been on the show, on roadshows with Honeywell, and one of the guys was saying there's a plant in New Zealand that has 6 pumps that extract fat from milk, and if one of those pumps goes down, it costs them $200 a minute. And I said, so what you're saying is, if we reduce that time by just 14 minutes, you're cash positive on one of these devices, because an expert can remotely dial in and see through the eyes of that worker and talk them through and triage the issue or talk them through the fix. They're like, yeah, 14 minutes and we're cash positive. Industrial, easy.
I guess I can say I've seen quite a few startups that are doing a B2B to C play. So definitely trying to enable businesses to support their consumers. So that's definitely, something I'm seeing a lot of in the startup space.
I think the only point I'd make on this is that, especially a couple of years ago when Google Glass came out, there was a lot of talk of like, oh, this would be like, bring your own device. Will IT departments need to start figuring out how to handle smart glasses that have been consumer purchased? I don't really think that's going to be the case, but certainly, the fact that you can walk into a Best Buy and buy a pretty great VR headset right now is helping the general awareness, and it's helping with that soft sort of change management side of things, that when you do put a pair of glasses on someone for the first time or hand them a tablet, there's a greater acceptance. They've heard of it, they kind of get it, and they're not quite as...
2013 here at AWE, pretty much like 90% of the industry pivoted across to industrial. Before that, everyone was going for sales and marketing. They're like, wait till the ad agencies get our publishing tools, they'll love it. It'll be huge. The agencies, the creative directors, they didn't understand how to create for the space, and they still don't to some extent. But in the B2C space, there's a lot of stuff really, really working out there. And there's a lot of presence, and there's a lot of people in the enterprise who are seeing stuff outside and going, I just did this thing. So if you go into any 7-Eleven right now, down the road here, there's a campaign that our guys at Zappar built for Deadpool. And it's games that are unlocked every 3 or 4 days. They're gyro games or natural feature tracking, all that sort of stuff. In the first 4 weeks of a 3-month campaign, we've had almost 2.5 million hits at an average dwell time of 2 minutes 20. I extrapolated that out, and if you were paying for 30-second YouTube pre-rolls, the media cost to Google alone would have been 1.5 million already into the campaign without creative. So this campaign has already smashed an established pre-roll YouTube platform out of the ballpark. So it's out there and it's working. And one more, I gave my business card to a guy in an insurance company, and I met with him again 2 weeks later. He said, I gave your business card to my son, who's 7, and he goes, and he saw the Zap code, and he goes, yeah, Dad, that's that thing that was on the Scooby-Doo ice cream 3 years ago. And he was blown away. He couldn't believe that brand recall. So it's working out there, and enterprise will see it and see it validated.
So we just need to set some more meetings with 7-year-olds, get some business done.
It comes down to the number of users that are going to adopt to that feature or use case, and then how reusable it is. There's some really particular things in, say, like pharma that would be hard to translate to other industries, but we've seen some platforms add like support for beacons and IoT sensors, and that, of course, was just an advancement on the roadmap. So perhaps that's the second half of my answer, is like if it's already on your roadmap and people are asking for it and you see the numbers, it seems like a good play.
Yeah, I think that's about all the time we have. I really want to thank WXR Fund for inviting us all and having us here today. Follow them on Twitter, follow them on LinkedIn, get on the website, become a mentor if you're